the local law enforcement. And they are continually doing this by giving them grants, by having these riots occur in different cities where they're saying, oh, look, there's a race riot. And of course, agent provocateurs come in and the U.S. government comes in and says, listen, we need to take control of this situation. And we can see they're going from city to city to city, giving them grants and giving them military assets to use against the American people. While they're doing this, they're also getting tools to spy on the American people without a warrant or anything like that. We see out in California, thousands of pages of documents. Well, it has revealed that California law enforcement, they have been secretly acquired social media monitoring tools that focus on activists. The American Civil Liberties Union of California, well, they obtained thousands of pages of these documents, and they're showing that they're secretly purchasing social media surveillance software. And this is not just one police department. It's 63 police departments, sheriffs, and district attorneys across California. And when you look at this, they're using tools like Media Sonar, X1 Social Discovery, Geofedia. And they're using these tools to watch individuals. Now, there is no evidence in the documents of any public notice, debate, community input, or a lawmaker vote. And what they're doing right now is they're violating the Fourth Amendment. But it's starting to look like, and we've been seeing this quite often, that the police don't care. The government doesn't care. The state governments don't care. They're just doing whatever they want. A lot of times, the government, the U.S. government, the federal government, allows them to do this by giving them grant money, saying this is okay to do. Because the main goal of the U.S. government central bankers right now is to federalize all local police departments. Because you have to remember, when this collapse occurs, people are going to be very upset. Especially those people that are sleeping. Those people that have no idea that this is about to happen. And there's millions of them out there. They're going about their everyday lives. They're going to work. They're going to their children's, baseball games, soccer games, football games. They're going to the store, maybe buying stuff, going out to dinner. They think they're secure in their jobs, that everything is fine because the corporate media, the U.S. government has been telling them that everything is fine. The economy is completely recovered. We're at full employment. And nobody realizes that there's a problem because you have a job. Now, if they decided to look for a different job to make more money, they start to realize, something's wrong. Why can't I find a job? Or if they try to sell their house, they start to realize, that's strange. I can't sell my house. And those people who are getting laid off, they start to realize when they can't find a job, there's something terribly, terribly wrong. Now, these individuals that are kept in the dark, who are sheep, who are sleeping, who don't want to know what's really going on, they're going to be absolutely shocked. And the U.S. government needs to control as much as they possibly can. They don't care if people hurt each other. They don't care about that. They want to control the situation for themselves. They want to make sure that people don't get any ideas about coming after them. They want to make sure that people understand that you don't come after the government. We're not the problem here. The government didn't do this. We didn't cause the economic collapse, but we know they did. We know this was what they've been doing for quite a while. We know it was the central bank. This is why they want to bring down the economy in their way, to have a story, to create this narrative that they had nothing to do with this. And of course, they're ready to blame it on the people, or they're going to blame it on a country, or both, because we can see right now we're heading down this path, and there's no turning back. They know the system's coming down one way or another. It all depends on how it comes down. And they realize it's going to be mass hysteria. Once it sinks in, it might not happen the first day it happens. Of course not. It comes out, people are in shock, people don't know what to do, they lose their jobs, they stay home, they start looking for a job. But weeks after that, as the economy continually deteriorates, people are going to say, okay, something's wrong here. It's been 6-7 weeks now. I can't find work. What's going on? They're telling us the economy is okay. This is what they're getting prepared for. This is what the U.S. government central bankers are getting prepared for. And we're getting very, very close to that time frame of when this whole thing is going to start coming down. And we know that the U.S. government central bankers, they've been keeping tabs on those individuals that have weapons. And we hear from the Department of Justice that they're setting up gun intelligence centers in 3 U.S. cities to start off with. Because they're going to be spending about $67.2 million to set these up. Now, Washington, D.C., they're going to be putting a gun intelligence center there. They're going to be putting one in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Los Angeles. And of course, this is to identify gun trafficking, to find out information about crimes that are committed with weapons. But we can see the real purpose of this. It is to keep an eye on those individuals that have weapons, to track, to monitor. And we can see right now that this is going to be popping up in other cities. This is just the beginning, because we know their agenda for a very long time is to take the weapons away from the people. And we know this is a very difficult task. They've tried false flag after false flag, and they just can't get any traction. And you have to remember, the reason why they're having these false flags, where they have these mass shootings, is because they have legislation just sitting there, pending. And they need something, a spark, an event, to get them moving, to get people riled up. And they say, hey, look, we have this gun legislation. Why don't we pass it? Because we just had an event. Otherwise, without these events, legislation dies. It just sits there. There's no urgency to pass it. I mean, think about when 9/11 occurred. They had the Patriot Act all ready to go. It was just sitting there. They just needed an event to get it through, because no one would pass this thing without an event. It just sat there. No, what do we need this for? Makes no sense. So they needed something horrific to pass it. And this is what they've been trying to do. Because they're preparing. They have been for quite a while. To take control of the people. To take weapons away from the people. To take rights away from the people. And they've been doing this a little bit at a time. At least this is what they're trying to convince the public of. And they're trying to convince the next generation of. So we can see right now, we are heading down a path where their system is coming down, and they're getting prepared to control it, to protect themselves. And it looks like we're heading in that direction, and it's just a matter of time. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand that the United States government central bankers, the government of Kiev, the puppet government of Kiev, they've tried to get a war started. They tried to push a false flag in Crimea. It didn't work out. They tried to cut the electric off in Crimea. It didn't work out. Russia built a bridge and brought in electric from a different area. Instead of Ukraine, they came in from Russia. And we see in the southeastern area, Kiev right now is trying to push the southeastern people into doing something. Because this is how they want to start the war. They want the other side to lash out. So what they did is they cut the water supply into the Donbass area. And the Petrovsky water intake facility and Western filtering station controlled by Kiev was shut down. And right now we see there's a state of emergency in the districts because there's no water coming into the cities and villages, and this is going to cause a problem. Now, they're doing this to push the southeastern people over the edge. They tried it in Crimea by cutting the electric, and we can see right now they want to start a war. Remember, the U.S. has been in there. Other countries have been in there. They've been training the military. The U.S. is bringing in lethal weapons right now. And they're pushing the agenda because the United States right now, their backs are against the wall. They have lost control of the Middle East. They need to start a war. And out in Syria, the situation is deteriorating very, very quickly. And we can see that things are really heating up. There's a heated argument in the UN between the US and Russia. And it looks like this ceasefire peace deal, it's completely gone. So Russia, they released the full text of the Russia-US deal on Syria. It is in Russian. You can translate it by using Google Translator. I have the link here on x22report.com. Just click on the episode, scroll down where it says Moscow releases full text, and you'll see the link in there that will bring you to it, and you can translate it and read it yourself. And the whole thing was the United States was supposed to join up with Russia, coordinate the entire attacks on the Islamic State, separate al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, al-Sham from the moderate rebels, get rid of those terrorist groups, and just have the moderate rebels left over. And you can see that the United States government central bankers, they weren't going to do this. So right now, what we're seeing is the United States made this deal, and they knew they couldn't go ahead with it. They didn't want it published because they knew they were going to break it. And you can see right now, it didn't say anything about Syria not bombing the terrorist groups. They were allowed to do it. And, of course, the United States government central bankers, they're pushing ahead with war. Right now, Washington, they have plans to arm the Syrian militants with manpads. Now, of course, Syria and Russia, they're flying their jets. We know that Kerry wanted to have a no-fly zone over their terrorist groups. So the next thing they're going to do is they're going to give the terrorists manpads, where you're going to see Syrian jets, Russian jets shot out of the sky. This is going to cause a major problem. The war is being escalated to the next phase. They're pushing their agenda for war. Now, the Syrian intelligence is picking up information that the U.S. is planning a false flag in Syria. And they rebranded al-Qaeda al-Nusra group al-Sham. And it's a big sham. They're planning to use white phosphorus, and they're going to use it on civilians. Now, they're not going to be dressed up in their uniforms. The intelligence says they're going to be dressing up as Syrian soldiers, and they're going to attack civilians using white phosphorus. Now, we know that the U.S. sells white phosphorus to other countries. The U.S. uses white phosphorus, and we know this is banned, and you cannot use this on civilians or even troops. So the U.S. has repeatedly used a loophole to use white phosphorus during Middle Eastern campaigns, while claiming the indiscriminate weapon is only used as a smokescreen for advancing their troops. But from all the burns and all the pictures that we see from the damage that white phosphorus does, we can see that they're actually using it on civilians. Saudi Arabia was using it on civilians in Yemen. And very interestingly, there were American experts that had visited one of the chemical munition depots in the rebel held town, and they were there for quite a while. They examined the site, and then the experts departed from Syria to Turkey. Now, most likely, this plan is in motion. And we're going to have to watch this situation very carefully, because if we see this false flag, because we know the United States government central bankers, they need to start and have some type of an event. We know that Turkey has done this before, where they sent soldiers in with a missile launcher over the border into Turkey, and those soldiers fired a missile back into Turkey saying Syria just attacked us. And we know this is done all the time. And they're even saying that these terrorists that are going to be dressed up in Syrian uniforms, they're actually going to film it, almost like the Islamic State when they film the false flag beheadings and stuff, and they make a big production deal out of it, and it goes from site intelligence that's distributed out to the rest of the world saying, look what we found. We know that this was completely made up, and we see they're going to be doing the same exact thing, because they have to show that, look, Syria just did this, we have it on film, it's time to attack Assad, and it looks like we're heading down this path. Now, something very interesting happened out in France. It looks like they were planning on a false flag, because in a small town, the town of Saumur, the locals, a gardener, discovered in a cave outside the town Islamic State flags, equipment, and they brought it to the attention of the authorities, and the authorities came in and said, whoa, what is all this? And then, of course, the government came in and said, oh, no, this is for an exercise that we're going to plan. Now, what's very interesting is that the majority of the media ignored a story that caused alarm for thousands of local residents and involved all of the nation's emergency services. The story was only reported maybe in the local newspaper, another small news outlet, but that's it. And we can see what happened was they were caught, and they didn't want this information out there. This is why it wasn't a big story. They kept it under wraps. Now we see the EU counterterrorism chief and the FBI. They are now warning that there's an upcoming massive terrorist attack that's going to hit in the EU and in the United States. James Comey said he is convinced that even though the Islamic State will soon be destroyed by Russia and Syria, that will not be the end of it. What we're going to see is that these violent extremists will eventually flow out of Syria and into other countries in hopes of committing attacks. He said there's going to be attacks like we've never seen before. So what we're seeing right now is the EU and the FBI broadcasting the next event. It looks like we're heading to that time period where they're prepared and they are ready to give the green light for the go-ahead. The go-ahead for the event. Because what do we know? The entire system is based on the petrodollar. The Middle East is a complete mess. The U.S. is losing control. The economy is deteriorating very quickly. The global economy is deteriorating very quickly. And then we have the elections. Now, what I'm seeing here, this can turn out in two different ways. If the candidate that they want is elected, they will wait for that candidate to be sworn in January, and most likely have this event in 2017 to say, okay, we're in this collapse, it's time to go to war, here we go. If the polls show that their candidate that they want is not going to be elected, they will have the event before the elections, to postpone the elections. Now remember, the central banks, the shadow government, the elite, they run the system. It's not the president. They have to take orders from them, do what they want. And if there's a person in there that's not going to do this, they're of no use to them. And we can see that things are rapidly changing very quickly. The economy is deteriorating very quickly. They want to bring it down themselves because they want to keep the narrative. They want to bring us to war. And it's starting to look like these two scenarios are a huge possibility because we're already getting the green light from the EU security director and the FBI. They're already broadcasting that they're expecting something. And this is what these people do. When they know something's coming, especially with the Islamic State, they're beaten, but they're still using it to show that this is going to happen. And most likely, once the physical attacks occur, they will then be followed up with some type of cyber attack from Russia, North Korea, China. Now remember, they have multiple plans all ready to go because we don't know what scenario is going to play out. Remember, we have the 9/11 veto bill with Congress trying to push that through. We have the elections. We have two candidates. The Islamic State is losing ground in Syria. They're almost defeated. The petrodollar is under threat. So they have many different plans ready to go. We just don't know which one they're going to use. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.